We have agreed to implement a nationwide cessation of hostilities to begin in a target of 1 week's time. That's ambitious, but everybody is determined to move as rapidly as possible to try to achieve this.
Peace in the Middle East? That's what Secretary of State John Kerry says could happen in 1 week's time. But is that in fact possible after almost 5 years of war in Syria? For more, let's welcome to the anchor desk the president and the founder of the Institute of World Politics, John Lenczowski. John, it is great to have you here tonight on Newsmax Prime.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Congressman.
So both Russia and the U.S. have called for a ceasefire in this Syrian civil war. When John Kerry came out last night and talked about a, quote, cessation of hostilities, is that just bureaucratic speak for a ceasefire? And do you think a ceasefire will, in fact, take place?
Well, I think that a ceasefire actually is a term that has some formal connotations in international law, which require a lot of some real specifics in the realm of action. And it remains to be seen whether anything like that will actually take place. I have my doubts. I think that this is a useful thing for humanitarian purposes, but as a practical matter, it's going to solidify a number of the actions on the ground that the Assad regime and the Russians have taken.
Now, John, you mentioned humanitarian reasons, and if this cessation of hostilities in fact takes place, would it reduce the flow of refugees out of Syria?
It's very hard to say. This is such a complicated situation. Syria has become and really is a patchwork of little emirates that have created for themselves some kind of a modus vivendi insofar as they are able to coexist with each other. I for one, believe that it is extremely problematic for the United States to be involved in destabilizing established governments in the Middle East. Because every time we've done it, whether it was pulling the rug out from under the Shah, overthrowing Saddam, overthrowing Gaddafi, and now some of these really lame efforts to try to destabilize Assad, in every single case, the radical Islamists come into play, and it's worse.
So it's better to stick with the devil you know instead of the devils who are engaged in terrorism on the outside.
This very well may be the case. I'm sorry to say. This is a question of lesser of evils. And I would ask the Christians in Syria what they think about it.
Well, we've heard from the Reverend Franklin Graham, and he has his own concerns when he sees what has happened to the Christian community. You know, John, the Russian bear has gotten as bellicose as it used to be during the days of the Cold War. Russia is saying the Syrian Civil War could turn into a world war. Do you believe that's possible?
No, I don't think so. I think it is Russian propaganda. I think the Russians are flexing their muscles. I think that Putin has his own internal problems, huge internal problems with his economy, with his own legitimacy, and he needs to distract his public's attention from their ailments inside, and by achieving some kind of victories and greater influence for Russia in the world.
John, only about 30 seconds left. In terms of this cessation of hostilities, whatever we choose to call it, will this help or hurt the United States in terms of dealing with ISIS?
I think that, frankly, the sooner some of this gets solved in terms of, frankly, Assad consolidating power in the western part of the country, which I think is frankly, the least of the evils, then it will be possible for everybody to turn their attention to ISIS. And I think that the Saudis, the Turks, and everybody else who are involved in helping the radical, helping some of these so-called moderate oppositionists in Syria, should turn their attention to creating independent Sunni enclaves in Syria and in Iraq.
And we will have to leave it right there. John Lenczowski, we thank you for your time. Up next, we're going to talk energy and economics, so stay with us.